तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Who wants to summarize what we did? Just very, very quick. Vimal, you are ready? No.
I'm quiet. In the second verse, there was a difference between action and knowledge. Said that no action can give us the freedom we are looking for. Only knowledge can do this job. Then there was a question: what is the difference between action and knowledge? And action is Purusha Vastu?
No, Purusha Tantra.
Purusha Tantra, yes. And it means it depends on my free will, on choice. Knowledge is Vastu Tantra, and I have to capture an object like it is.
Okay. Get a given thing.
Yeah, and given thing.
Yeah.
To understand our true nature, we need an independent means of knowledge. With perception and inference, we normally use
inference.
Inference, yes, my English.
No problem. Please do.
Perception and inference will not do this job. Then the question arises: what kind of knowledge can give us Atma Bodha? Direct or indirect knowledge? This was a very important question because we discussed the mind is limited, how to get unlimitedness. And indirect knowledge is when the object is far away from me. And Atma is always present, so it can deliver direct knowledge to me. We have different prakyas to do this job. And you yesterday you spoke about Vishta Viveka. It means that our sense organs are receiving objects, the eyes or light. So we are both saying in the meditation that the sounds were heard, no? And but the eyes or the ears require another medium. It requires the mind, and then it changed. Not more the eyes are the drik, the mind become drik and eyes drishta. And the problem is that normally we are staying here on this level and thinking this is the final reality, this is I. And Vedanta goes one step further and shows us that even for the mind, which is nothing else than a constant flux of thought, and it requires awareness to think. So
it doesn't require awareness to think without awareness.
It's no thinking possible. This way, no? And then we spoke about antakarana, the core functions of the mind, and that we have to improve each function of the mind. It means that the buddhi gets sharp, that the manas, our emotions, we will handle. This the buddhi, that our chitta, Suryana, is yesterday a joke that we had forgotten something. That our chitta is also put in work, and the ahankara, the I sense. But this I sense is a problem, because everything we are doing here, even karma yoga or prayers, it's always I do something and I reinforce the problem. So far.
Okay. Excellent. Just the last point, right? I mean, I reinforce the problem if I do wrong imputation, not otherwise.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's not like karma yoga. Just 1 second, let me make it. See, it has to be very precise because otherwise it will seem as though karma yoga will reinforce my ignorance.
No, I made it short. I can.
Yes. No, but I as a teacher, I will make it clear.
Okay.
Right. So that means it's not anything you do with your mind will reinforce your ignorance. But if you start thinking that this awareness has to be replicated in the mind, that will create a confusion. What does it mean? It means, suppose I say that Atma is never involved, right? Or it is with any operation of the mind. So suppose you continue to identify, your eye still remains with the mind, and within mind you create a distinction. And that distinction is, yeah, all these thoughts are objectified and I am the one who's the Sakshi. Sakshi is a common thing. Now, what you have done is, when Vedanta is talking about Sakshi, Vedanta is not talking about one mode of mind. Vedanta is talking about one reality which is the truth of the whole universe. It's not some one thing which is doing this job of observing and all that. So what happens is that if you start imputing the nature of awareness into one function of your mind, that's when it is a problem. But the mind you need to use, otherwise how will you understand? So using the mind doesn't reinforce the error. Wrong imputation reinforces the error. Do you understand? Otherwise what will happen is, let's not use the mind, because if I use the mind, I'll make the error. No. When I use the mind itself, you need, without mind there is no anything. Right? Karma yoga requires a karta, the responsible karta. But that doesn't reinforce ignorance. It actually helps you remove the ignorance. But if you do wrong imputation, that's what actually, when you listen to pramana, and instead of understanding what is the nature of awareness, you try to recreate awareness in your mind, the nature of that creates a problem.
So it's not like as long as I'm thinking, I'm a karta, I'm a doer, I'm not reinforcing.
The thing is, if you understand that karta is not something which is not reality, right?
Yeah, but this
because
is necessary.
It's absolutely necessary,
Yes,
right? So karta is absolutely necessary. In fact, this is a very important thing, right? So that means that you have to take ownership for your life. You can't just say, oh, everything is awareness and all that. You have to take ownership for your faculty of choice. You can't just say, yeah, it's just happening. Ownership is, that's why this pretense of knowledge is a huge problem. So that means you feel, this again a wrong imputation. If I take ownership, karta, therefore, then I will not know Atma. No. Karta, what is the place of karta? Karta is in the mind. That mind takes the ownership. But nature of Atma is free from doership. By making your mind not doer, you don't get close to nature of Atma. This is what I keep saying, wrong imputations will make your learning so erroneous. You're not doing anything to karta. You're not trying to eliminate karta. You're trying to understand where is karta. Where is karta? In the mind. In awareness, is there kartritva? No. Clear. Your mind will take ownership of things. You are a karta. In fact, you'll be a better karta than everybody else. Better doer because you are responsible. You will think about your choices. They will not be mechanical. This is why I am akarta is a fact. But where is that akartrutvam? In awareness. If you try to reproduce akartrutvam in the mind, problem. This is why this knowledge, and it's good that you say what you think, because in these things big errors can get eliminated. Otherwise you live with these errors for years. So therefore the placement of things is Vedanta. Get exactly right. So they who gave yesterday, I think it was Shona who said yesterday during lunchtime or dinner time, right? So that means the problem is not what the I's problem doesn't belong to mind, clarity. But that doesn't mean that the I problem doesn't have to be taken care of. But you're not wrong. Attribution means the I's problems are taken to be mind's problem. This is called wrong attribution. So that means the mind remains a karta. That is a faculty in the mind. The faculty in the mind is your decision making. Who is making decision otherwise? If you don't take responsibility for your actions, who will take? But Atma is not karta. Awareness, there is no kartrutva. But that doesn't mean you have to produce non-kartrutvam in the mind. This is something which is this kind of, please don't use this loose Vedanta, it will destroy you more than, you will become more abnormal than a normal person. Let me not take ownership for anything. Okay? I tell you, Vedanta is the sanest thing where there are all mix-ups are gone. Otherwise it's all pretense. The whole thing is spiritual pretense. When you put things right, in fact you can live with so much freedom. Okay, now, so, but very good job done. Yeah. But see, when I correct these errors, you can't take it personally. Why? Because these are critical corrections. If you don't correct these things, you will build on a wrong understanding. So earlier things get corrected, the better it is. So don't be afraid of corrections. Don't be threatened by corrections. Okay. So now one thing is, so what we saw is, now we are caught little bit in this whole, you have to use the mind to understand this pramana, which is a means of knowledge. So you have to use the mind, but you actually, you have to get to awareness, which is completely independent of the mind. So like what we saw, you have to use the glass and with the water, but it has got nothing to do with water, it has got nothing to do with vessel, you have to get to the sun in the example, right? But you do need a clear mind. So now you're using the mind to get to awareness. And how are you doing it? Through means of knowledge. Means of knowledge means the teaching. Now the meanings that the teaching give you, they have to be recreated in your mind, right? So this is why your mind has to be sharp and clear and not doing wrong attributions. Because otherwise what will happen, it will twist the meaning. By the time what the teacher says and when you receive it, it will twist it. and therefore it won't get there. So this particular process of knowing, how does this happen, is called vritti jnana. So that means the proper thoughts have to take place which will give you knowledge of this reality. What is vritti jnana? Vritti jnana means, let's first take a simple example. Suppose I ask you, what is this? What will you say? Specs, right? Now, did this physical specs enter your mind? No. So what happened? How did you come to know it was specs?
Eyes.
Yeah. So what did the eyes do?
They send a signal.
The eyes actually received the signal and they sent it to the mind. And what mind did is, it created a vritti, a thought. And that thought took the form of specs. How do you write specs?
S-P-E-C-S.
S-P-E-C-S.
No case.
Okay, specs. Okay. Anyway, I'm not good at spelling. Okay. So what happens is, so this is a thought. So this is what we call vritti. A vritti arose in your mind, which is that of a specs, and it gave you the knowledge of specs. Suppose I change it and I'm holding flower in my hand, what will happen? Now the thought that you have has to eliminate specs and it has to give you flower.
Or is it a picture?
Sorry?
Is it a thought or is it a picture?
It's in form of it's a thought. Thought which recreates this form.
It's a representation.
It's a representation.
In technical, in neuroscience, we say cognition, or in psychology, we say cognition. So representation. Here we say thought, to simplify. Okay, that is true. It's a representation. It's a kind of image that forms in your mind, which is aligned with what is outside.
This thought has two things. One is what we call vritti vyapti, and the second is phala vyapti. It does two operations.
And the second one?
One is vritti vyapti, and the second one is phala vyapti.
So this thought arises when I see something or when I process the data?
Anything.
Okay.
So for example, this is just a simple example. Suppose you are in math class, right? Now the teacher is writing. How do you understand it? Whatever is being taught, what happens is, how does your mind understand? Your mind creates thoughts regarding this. Now, either they can be accurate thoughts, which is capturing what the teacher is saying, or they can be inaccurate thoughts, which don't, inaccurate thoughts in the way that either you are understanding something totally opposite, or you are understanding it vaguely, or you are partially understanding it, or you are capturing exactly what the teacher is saying. So that's why what happens is, suppose you are in a classroom, we go to school, you are in a classroom and you have a geography teacher, for example, right? All of us are listening, and then at the end of the term or end of whatever, there is an exam. What is the exam trying to do? Access what exactly, how your mind has processed this information. Suppose you get 100 out of 100. What does it mean? Your mind has processed, because when the teacher asks you a question, they'll twist it a little bit to see how much you have understood, the depth of your understanding, the width of your understanding. So suppose you have wrongly understood, what will happen? You'll get 0. Suppose you have partially understood, what will happen? You'll get 50, 60, whatever. Suppose you have pretty much understood, then you will get 80. And suppose your understanding is exactly what the teacher is saying, you'll get 100. You'll be a topper. You understand? So that means anything that you learn, your mind creates, but all of them feel as though they have learnt. Right? True? They all feel they have learned, they all think, right? And they mug up and they go through it again and again and again. So, but still, what we see is that learning is of different levels. And the exam will give you. So what your mind is doing is creating vrittis. Because otherwise you can't understand it. Right? So that means your minds are creating thoughts. So there is a thought, and what it does is it kind of objectifies in the sense that it kind of creates a given concept, and as a result of this thought, when it objectifies, what happens? It is called understanding, and this understanding is of different levels. Okay? So that means anything, whether whatever, a little abstract or whatever, it requires a little sharper mind, because the mind has to figure out many things. If it is just an object, it's easy. But if it is building on inferences and all, you have to be sharper and your mind has to reach accurately. Okay? Now, when it comes to Vedanta is exactly the same. You can't have any other process other than this process, because mind understands everything through this process, whether it is about external world or it is about oneself. The means of knowledge is different, but the process of the mind is the same. Okay? So, as you begin to listen to the teacher who is explaining Vedanta, what is your mind doing? It's creating thoughts. Right? So that's why it seems as though I always understood little better than what I knew before, and it's true, right? But when is, what is the example? The cloud has to go completely so that the sun shines exactly as it is. Not partially, not it has to completely disappear. So how does this cloud completely disappear? Is through vritti. Otherwise it's not possible. This is why when one person understands, the other person doesn't understand. Because that person's vritti could have reached this awareness, but the other person's vritti has not yet reached that awareness. Okay? Now, what is special about this vritti as opposed to everything? So your mind begins to think about awareness. Your mind, so that's why if your mind is not very accurate, it will do wrong attributions. Suppose you are told Atma is free from sorrow. What is the place which is free from sorrow? Awareness is free from sorrow. You will start wanting the mind to be wrong attributions. Because now you have given the quality of awareness to the mind, and now you want the mind to be what awareness is. Wrong attributions. This is why this whole thing is, there is a beautiful verse in 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Kim karma kima karmeti. So many people are mohitaha. You think by doing less action, you go closer to actionlessness. He says, not at all. Not at all. Atma, no matter how active you are, Atma always remains actionless. That is knowledge. The locus where activity is taking place is body, mind, sense, consciousness. don't attribute it to Atma. By doing less, you become lazy. You don't get closer to Atma. All this has to be totally clear. So therefore, this is attribution. So the thoughts are created. So what is, yesterday I said growing clarity. What does it mean? What does growing clarity mean? Your thoughts begin to become clear. Exactly. Your wrong attributions begin to reduce. This is called growing clarity. Your mind begins to be more precise, more, but still hasn't reached the final understanding. So that means, what is this final understanding? But this is required. Clarity is required. Your thought processes have to come closer and closer to reality. The final vritti which will remove all the clouds is what we call akhandakara vritti.
Say one time more.
Akhanda akara vritti. Just 1 minute. Let me a little bit, these are very important topics, so please hold your questions a little bit. I know people are raising things, but I will first explain and then you can ask me questions. Let me finish my explanation, then you can ask me questions. Okay. So, what is akhandakara vritti? Akhandakara vritti means, it's not like it's going to come all of a sudden. You first time listen to Vedanta, some thoughts are created. They are not precise enough, right? You listen to Vedanta again, what will happen? Your thought processes will be refined a little bit more, then refined a little bit more, and at one point, one thought which will come, which will what? Understand the nature of awareness exactly as it is. Exactly as it is meant to be understood. Without any addition on your part, without any subtraction on your part, without any imagination on your part, without any vagueness on your part. This is what we call akhandakara vritti. What is the characteristic of this vritti? So that means the knowledge is totally transferred in its totality. This is what we call the last piece of puzzle is now in its place. But in order for the last, if you only concentrate on last, that becomes the first. So you need all of this to be put in place. So this is what we call growing clarity. Your mind is thinking about Vedanta, this, and the last puzzle is what we call, piece of puzzle is called akhandakara vritti, where the whole subject matter is totally transferred. Without any vagueness, without any partiality, without any addition, subtraction on your part. Okay? What is the characteristic of this buddhi? In every other thought cognition, there are two operations. What are the two operations? The thought comes and it assumes what? That object. Right? Specs have to be that image of that object. Now, for Atma, can there be any corresponding image? No. Because it's not a given object. This is why it's not like every other cognition. There is a vritti. It has to be there because only through cognition you understand. So what does this vritti do? The thought has come. And what has it done? It has totally removed the cloud so that you see the nature of awareness totally clearly. There is no corresponding image because Atma is not a given thing. So when you have to understand the specs, your mind has to create a there is a vritti, but what does it do? It creates the image of specks, and therefore, what does it do? The ignorance or whatever is removed, and therefore you gain knowledge. In this akhandakara vritti, the thought does come. And what is the job it does? It removes ignorance totally, but without any corresponding image.
So there is no association. You don't associate that knowledge with anything.
No, that's not what I'm saying. No, association, there is no question. So that means, see, so many things you have. Association, what do you mean by association?
You remember things by connecting them.
Yeah,
right?
so in fact it's required, no? Because this will not take place unless you hold all of this. It's not a given, it's not. All of this, actually, you don't forget in order to get here. In fact, all of this will help you to put the last piece in place, because you have to understand infinity. Infinity means it includes everything. You can't understand infinity and leave everything. There is no leaving behind. It includes everything and it is free from everything. If it left things behind, it's not called infinity. Simple logics have to be absolutely clear. Otherwise the mind will keep creating its own ideas about what this knowledge is.
So there is no phalavritti.
There is no phalavyapti. There is no phalavyapti because there is no image. But there is vritti vyapti. The vritti does come. And what is the job it does? It totally, before many thoughts came, hours and hours of Vedanta, 10 years of Vedanta suppose. What happened? There were thoughts. It's not that they were not there, but they did not reach the nature of Atma totally accurately. But it improved the understanding. So every time you feel, yeah, I understand now, then you say, no, I understand now. That time I didn't understand. So what does it mean? It's getting growing clarity.
That's why we need to deal with the word and with Ishvara, to understand how the things are going on, and then we understand.
Wonderful. You know why? Because can you create tomorrow I want akhandakara vritti. Or today, why tomorrow? If, like Timur will say now, right? Maybe he already has, who knows, right? Who knows, right? So, what it means is, this vritti is not in your hand. What you can do is what? Keep listening and keep trying to get your mind as precise as possible to get closer and closer to this reality. That's why it requires reflection on your part. It requires a little time on your part. If you hurry too much, you're in too much hurry for moksha. I want to get away from life. Now this is too painful. Stay there. Stay there. Make it pleasurable. Make it fun. Make it meaningful. 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Let me finish. There were other questions. 1 minute. So therefore, this is what we call akhanda akara vritti, without image, but what it does is removes ignorance. Now, in this verse, what it says is, what happens to this vritti after having removed the ignorance? What happens to this vritti? Does this get stuck to you for rest of your life, where you keep thinking, I'm Brahman, I'm Brahman, I'm Brahman, I'm Brahman, I'm Brahman? Itself goes away. It has done its job. So this is the image. What is the image? That the bucket, it has purified the water and it has gone below, it has settled, it has performed its job. If you try to powder, if you try to hold on to this vritti, that, oh, so many people used to come and ask Swamiji and say that, Swamiji, I understand this knowledge, but I can't retain it. So what are they trying to do is, they want this vritti to stay forever in their mind. I'm the whole, I'm limitless, I'm limitless, I'm limitless. What will you do for rest of your life? You're only repeating, I'm limitless, not needed. The vritti has come, produced knowledge, it has gone, the knowledge, ignorance is gone once and for all. What does it mean? Suppose you say 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. Now do you have to keep repeating for rest of your life? Oh, let me not forget 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. Oh, let me not forget. Retention is not required once it is understood. Especially if it is about the nature of Atma. Something else you may forget, but you won't forget. If you have really understood, you can never forget who you are. So that means, if you say that I have understood and I am trying to retain, Swamiji will say that I am very clear you haven't understood. Right? So that means the minute you start speaking about this knowledge, your clarity comes out. And this is why it's very important to speak about this knowledge. Because the lack of clarity has to be removed. Otherwise, it's not possible. So therefore, this is the function. After having performed its job, it goes away. Like every vritti goes away. But it has done its job of showing you what is the nature of Atma with the use of pramana accurately. Okay? And until this knowledge, this akhandakara vritti has taken place, it is what we call growing clarity. You still have to use your thought processes, but they haven't yet reached the final reality. Okay? Now, questions? Yeah, many questions, yes.
When you spoke about certain attributions, right? So correct and incorrect attributions.
Yes.
If you could please give an example in day-to-day life, like I will just give you one, you just correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Like how we take a failure or a bad situation in life, say, so correct attribute and wrong attribute. The wrong one will lead to depression or something like that. So
Very good,
yeah?
very good. So that means, you're right, there is, this mind and its attributions are a huge thing. Wrong attributions lead to so much suffering, absolutely. So that means, suppose, even take a very simple example. Let's suppose you passed by and somebody didn't smile at you. And the wrong attribution. The person doesn't like me. The person is too proud. The person is not interested in me. All these are what we call maybe and may not be.
So it takes us away from awareness.
Takes us aware. That is not the awareness that we are talking about. It makes our mind, see, please don't mix the two. It makes our mind inaccurate.
Okay.
And an inaccurate mind, when it listens to Shastra, doesn't get what is the nature of awareness. Awareness is free from everything. All the activities of the mind. We saw Drik Drishya Viveka methodology. What did it show you? That anything, mind is Drishya. Whatever are the characteristics of the mind, they never touch Atma. Right? So it doesn't mean your awareness gets contaminated. What is happening? Your mind is inaccurate. Do you understand? This has to be totally clear what is happening where. Is it clear?
When we say that this thought, the akhandaka vritti, doesn't come with the image, what do you mean by image?
Image means it's not a given object. So as I just gave you an example. Image means what? Pen. If you have to see the pen, how will you see the pen? You will create the image of the pen. The thought will carry the image of this pen. If I tell you Brahman, which corresponding image will come? No. Why? Because it is not an object.
has no form,
It
no
has no
color,
form.
no dimension. So what image will you create?
Subject.
Isn't it called association that we associate thought with the object or the image or the past thoughts? Isn't it called association, or am I wrong?
See, please, association is something, please don't mix it with, our thoughts move from one thought to the other at times by association. What does it mean? It means, this is just a way the mind works. Suppose I see Ganga, right? Then through associative thinking, suppose then I'll say, oh, yeah, Ekaterina is now dipping in Ganga, but maybe last year she was doing it at Mansarovar. This is called thinking by association. One thought has moved to what? Ganga has moved to Ekaterina. Ekaterina has moved to Mansarovar. Then I said, oh, then she also did Pradakshina of Mount Kailash. So then it has moved from Mansarovar to Mount Kailash. Then I also want to go there. This is what we call one thought leads to the other thought. The other thought leads to the other thought, and this is all done through association. Okay? Now, suppose you are learning Vedanta, right? I can't teach you Vedanta in one class, and you want to know the entire vision in one class. Not possible. Right? Why? Because it has many, many different things that it needs to cover. It needs to look into the cause of the universe. It needs to look into the cause of who are you, the nature of the universe, the relationship between all of that, different aspects of your maturity. That is not something which can be done one thing after the other. So it builds. So that building is, I think, what you're calling association. I don't know what you mean by association. And that's true. That building through logical building is something which is done through, you retain the first part and you build on it. Then you retain that and you build on it. And then the last thought is something which will give you the total clarity about everything, without anything which is misplaced. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that means here we are talking about akhandakara vritti, which is the last thought which will give you total clarity of the whole subject matter. Yeah. But before that, it's true. The whole learning is done through some building, and that building, I think, what you are calling association. Right? Okay.
So we have this building thoughts, and then we come to the less thought, and then afterwards there are also many thoughts, because thoughts don't stop.
Exactly.
But can we say something about the difference of these thoughts afterwards and the thoughts before? Is it that they are put more into the right place?
See, the whole thinking process, that is all preparation, right? This is why eligibility is so important. This is why in 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna is saying, hey, you try to get to this final reality without your thought processing being in order. Forget it. So bringing Ishvara in your life is actually, what is it doing? It is moving you from unfair universe to an intelligent universe. So it is putting your thoughts in order. You understand? And these thoughts, and then instead of blaming the world, you begin to be of problem solving. What can I do in this situation? What is it doing? It is putting your thoughts in order. Instead of saying, I am nobody, it says, I am one of the manifestations of Ishvara. I am given the capacity to act, I am given the capacity to do, I am given the capacity to desire and to know, let me use it. These are all putting your thought processes in order. The whole preparation is putting your thought processes in order. Your relative thought processes have to be in order. In order for your thought processes to take you to this final reality. So that means now you are asking, after having understood this, will your thought processes be in order? Yes, of course. Because why? As a preparation, I have put my thought processes in order. Do you understand? This is why the wise person has tremendous clarity. How? because the wise person has worked for this clarity, for that final clarity to take place. And once the final clarity has taken place, can you say, will you be clear? Yeah, of course, because I have worked for it for years. Not I, whoever, right? I mean, whoever has worked for years. So they are not going to change and become disorderly. In fact, they will reach even further order, because the entire picture is absolutely clear. There are no wrong attributions, there are no errors in thinking, there is a complete clarity. That is when we say the knowledge is crystal clear. This is why when somebody asks, suppose a physicist stands in front of you and asks you questions, then it's not what is this Vedanta, they don't know, they don't care, they just ask you. You don't start shaking, oh my God, that means it's not clear. So if you have really, that person may not be convinced, that it doesn't totally depend upon you, but your knowledge doesn't shake. You don't feel threatened. You don't feel, oh my God, now what? That doesn't happen. That means the processes are not yet complete. So that means your clarity has to reach that level. Yeah, she has been asking for a long time.
I've got just a question. The two kinds of thoughts you mentioned before, not the but the ones
the normal.
Could
Yes.
you please
Yes.
repeat the names and what they are?
Yes. Okay. So this is called thought. This is called vritti. This is called thought, right? It has two things. In order to know anything, it needs two things. One is that thought. Let's take a very simple pen, right? The thought has to come. And what does this thought do? It creates the image of this pen. So this is called phalavyapti. Phalavyapti. And as a result of creating this image, what will do? It will do the job of giving you knowledge of pen and remove the ignorance. So there are two operations. It creates an image, and then as a result of this image, it will remove the ignorance. Suppose you have not created an accurate image. Suppose your eyes are a little defective, and suppose instead of black, you have given an attribution. The image that you have created is that of dark blue. Right? So that means now the knowledge has gone not completely. Why? Because it's not exactly capturing what is. This is why I defined knowledge as Vastu Tantra. Vastu Tantra means it depends upon this. You like blue, but that has got no relevance here. You cannot say, oh, I love blue, so let me see it as blue. That will make it error. You understand? This decides what is the color. What you prefer doesn't decide what is the color. Yes? So that means the accuracy of this image will decide whether the ignorance goes or not. Is it clear?
Mm-hmm. And the name of the other one?
The other one is called vritti vyapti. Vritti vyapti. Okay? So what happens in this case is, there is no corresponding image because it's not a given object. At the same time, the total understanding of Atma, what it does is, it comes, removes the ignorance of Atma and it goes away. Yeah? Is it clear? Okay. So
I'm not clear.
Okay.
Mine
Sure.
is definitely not clear.
No problem.
So you said that by making less action, you are...
By what?
By making less action,
Yes.
It's wrong to think that you are getting closer to Atma.
Yes.
And in my mind, it's contradictory, but I think it's not, but I consider, it's encouraged to live next to the Ganga so
Okay.
isn't
So
there
what
a
it means
contradiction
No. So that means, so that whole Bhagavad Gita is about that, right? Lord Arjuna keeps asking Lord Krishna that I want to go and I want to contemplate on Atma and I want to, spend a lot more time on that. And action is just a deviation because action is not going to give me the final thing. Lord Krishna says this is not the right way of thinking about it because as long as you are stuck with your distortions, you leave everything. And with that distorted mind, you think about Atma, you'll keep going in circles. So that means you have to continue to live in this world and make that world will give you an opportunity to correct. And that correction, when you do, it will take you to knowledge faster. So that means, because the key is with a distorted mind cannot get this vritti right. So therefore, if you have left everything prematurely without correcting the distortion, they are not going to get corrected just by a miracle. The activities that you perform actually will give you some insight into where is my mind going off. This has happened, I'm very angry. Correction needed. Something happens, you don't do well, oh my God, what about my image? Problem. Solve it. How, unless you interact with the world, how will you even recognize what distortions you have? And as you begin to correct those distortions, then your thinking processes become more accurate, and then you get to the final knowledge faster. The whole Bhagavad Gita is about that. Lord Krishna keeps telling Arjuna, don't think that removing from everything, it sounds romantic, it sounds beautiful, but prematurely doesn't actually aborts your growth rather than enhances your growth. But that doesn't mean, suppose you have done it for a length of time, then you are not totally, that not doing is not going to take you to actionlessness. Thinking about it and getting it right is going to take you to actionlessness. Please don't mix the two. It is the knowledge operation that the mind has to still do the job of reflecting on this knowledge, contemplation. They have not left everything to become inactive. They have left everything to contemplate about the nature of Atma. But in order to contemplate, you need a sharp mind, an accurate mind. And if you have prematurely closed every other avenue, what will happen is you are stuck with an inaccurate mind. Right? So that means doing or not doing is not getting you closer. What getting your thought process is right is going to get you closer. Yeah. Yes.
And with actionlessness, you mean in this context awareness.
Right? So that means the mind, when it does activity, there are beautiful verses in Bhagavad Gita exactly about this and awareness. We think that awareness is actionless, so the less the mind does the action, it will get closer to this. No, the knowledge of this is based on vritti. It's not based on this. I just explained to you, how does this take place? It doesn't take place whether you are doing things or not. It takes place through akhandakara vritti. And how does it take place? Your thought processes are becoming more and more accurate. Attributions, wrong attributions begin to go. Connections begin to be more specific. This leads to knowledge, not activity. I just explained how does the knowledge take place, right? Yeah.
You talked before about this final clarifying thought, so to speak, that will come without an image.
Yes.
And yet, this tradition is full of images in itself. There's so many statues and pictures.
Absolutely.
So isn't that counterproductive?
Why is it? Because, not at all. See, you're living in forms. You can't give up forms. If you think that I have to give up forms in order to reach this final reality, you will never get that. When will you be outside time, space and forms? As long as you are living here, you are within time, space and forms. The minute you open your eyes, you will see forms. How are you going to avoid it? You have to keep your eyes closed all the time. You are still stuck with your form. Your back will start aching and your mind will go there. That is still stuck with the form. If your understanding of Advaita depends upon eliminating forms, forget it. It will never get there. In spite of forms, you have to see one reality, which is the truth of all forms. This is why Ishvara is so important. All the forms, all the varied forms, you have collapsed into one thing, which is intelligence. When will you break the world? I don't want wall to be there because I want Advaita. I don't want this board to be there because I want non-duality. I have to kill myself if I want non-duality. This form will separate me from everything else. Elimination of form through perception is not non-duality. This Chandogya Upanishad, our Upanishads are brilliant. What? Vacha Rambhanam Vikaro Namadheyam Mrittika Ityeva Satyam. Brilliant. What? I can see hundreds of pots. If my attention is on the pot, I will count thousands. But if my attention is turned to clay, through all these 1,000 pots, I will see only one thing, which is the clay. Because other than clay, there is no second thing. This is the truth. Do I need to destroy all the pot? No. I don't have to do anything to the pots. Forms do not interfere with non-duality. If forms keep interfering with non-duality, when will you reduce all the forms? When? Do you have the capacity to reduce all the forms? Will you go and go outside the solar system and destroy that planet because you want non-duality? Please think about what are you talking about. The forms don't create duality. Your non-understanding creates duality. That is how the teaching is. This is why it's a very clever teaching. The mind has to reach the reality without altering its experiences. In and through the forms, you have to see that one thing. That is called vision. So that is how it is. Okay, we still have. Okay. Yeah.
To get to moksha and to get to Atma, you've got to clarify your thoughts. You've got to get to self-mastery.
Yes.
Someone who is pursuing Dharma only actually will be in the process. Because if you want to be more and more dharmic, you have a... So, yes.
Wonderful. So that means absolutely anything that you do, right? Suppose you follow Dharma, by itself will not get you here. At the same time it will help. Why? Because it is putting your mind in order. Anything that you do to put your mind in order will help. Absolutely. Whether it is your cognitive capacities or your emotional this thing or your expansion as a human being, being compassionate, all of this will help.
We come back to the verse of Atma Bodha. This is exactly what you're saying, but you are adding it and putting it in context. Cooking and fire. And then all the other ingredients, your knife and the setup and so on. This is secondary, preparative. Dharma is one key foundationer, secondary. By itself it will not get you to moksha. But without this, you will not be able to cook anything.
Okay, actually what you are saying is said in this next verse. So let's move, right? Samsara swapna tulyo hi raga dveshavi sankulaha swakale satyavat bhati prabodhe sati asat bhavet. This is something which is beautiful, which is also Ajahn Ehud's question, and this is something which is this akhandakara vritti that is produced doesn't negate the forms. The whole question is, do forms the existence of forms, do they create duality? That is the question.
Do they create?
Duality. Do you understand? So that means if your attention is on forms, definitely it creates duality. Because if you open your eyes, how many forms are here? Countless forms. And so many forms you see and so many forms you don't see. So that means there are countless forms. But these forms, they don't create duality. So you don't have to destroy these forms to arrive at duality. Why? Because all these forms, according to the scripture, is we think them to be Sat. But in reality they are Asat. What Asat doesn't mean? Asat means Mithya. Sat means Satya. So that means as long as these forms remain real for you, you are caught in samsara. But if you begin to understand that one thing which is the very content of the form, then these forms become mithya. And that content which is one is the only Satya. So Chandogya Upanishad example, pots. Take these forms as pots. There are countless. There are pots which belong to the past, pots which are yet to come. Here there are so many pots that are known to you, unknown to you. It's so many. So you can't know all of this. It's not possible. But you can know one thing. No matter which pot it is, if it is a clay pot, what is the relationship between pot and clay? Satya Mithya relationship. What is the Satya Mithya relationship? This is called, Mithya means dependent reality. It doesn't mean illusion, it doesn't mean it's false, it doesn't mean it is unreal. It means it has a dependent reality. And Satyam is that which has an independent reality. What does this mean? It means that suppose it's a clay pot, if I take out the clay, what will remain as pot? Nothing. The entire pot has its existence only in clay. Before the pot was born, it was clay. Now, while the pot appears as a given form, it is clay. After the pot is broken, it is clay. And it is not only true for one pot, it is true for all the pots. So therefore, if you count forms, there are many. If you count the content, there is only one. This is how you arrive at non-duality. So that means that there was always a clay. With all these hundreds of forms coming, it still remains clay. After those pots, some go, some come, some go, it still remains clay. Purna Madav, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnam Vadachyate. Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. One reality. All these forms come. That reality remains intact. The forms go, the reality remains intact. The coming and going of the form doesn't do anything to that reality. Advaita. The forms do not create any plurality. So this is why. So that means, what does this verse say? Who wants to read the verse? That while you take forms as reality, as long as that, then what will happen? Your samsara will continue. The minute you begin to pay attention to the content, what will happen? All these forms will become mithya. And then you, in and through these forms, you will see only one reality. Read this and then I will explain. This is a pot example, but I have to do a job. As I told you in the very beginning, pot-clay relationship does not necessarily prove what is here. It is just an example which helps you to understand how it is possible. Right? In itself, it doesn't prove, you can't say pot and clay relationship is like that, therefore the relationship of all the forms in the world to the final reality is the same. How did you come to that? You have no way to come to that. You have to show it independently. Do you understand? So, who had a question?
No.
You had?
No, me.
Okay. Yeah, you want to read? Yeah, please.
The world is truly like a dream only, with a twist and affected by binding likes and dislikes.
Little louder.
As long as it is experienced, it appears to be real. When we are awake, its unreality is seen.
Okay, very good. Okay, so the example is given, which is that of a dream. Right? What is it? I gave pot clay example. But here he gives what? The dream example. While you were dreaming, what? There was a dream time, dream space, dream characters, dream buildings, dream everything, right? And you were interacting. Suppose I'm sleeping in Rishikesh, but I dream of Paris, suppose, tonight. And then I think, oh, then let me go to Champs-Élysées because I love it. Then let me go to a cafe. Then he's charging me 10 euro and he's giving me this coffee. And I'm like, no, this is a total rip-off. Plus he's arrogant. Plus he's speaking in French only and he doesn't pay attention. Now, all this is happening. So then what happens? I'm irritated with him and I feel I'm ripped off. So all these transactions are happening. I'm feeling upset. I feel, oh my God, I can go to Gayatri here. And he'll give me nice coffee for some 10 rupees, 5. How much does he charge? 30
Yeah,
rupees. You see what I mean? So all this is going on in my mind. Right? It's all sounding wild in dream. The minute I wake up, where is the building? Where is the cafe? Where is the waiter? Where is the coffee? Where is the drinker? The whole thing is gone. It all, so please don't think upon waking it is gone. While it was going on, what was there?
It's my thoughts.
So that means it was only you.
Satan.
While you were dreaming, what was really there? Were the buildings there? Were the waiters there? Was the coffee there? Were you the one who was drinking the coffee was there? The entire thing was a play on. Did you get affected by anything? No. Because if you did get affected, if you really created the building, you'll wake up with Champs-Élysées building on it, which doesn't happen. So that means while the whole thing was going on, in reality, what is the example? There was only one. That one had projected into many. And while that many was going on, it gave you real experiences. And it gave you real feelings. But not only upon waking there is one. That is not it. While it is going on, it is
Also one.
everything else. What is the relationship? Everything that you see has a dependent reality. It cannot exist without you. But you are independent of everything. Nothing sticks to you. This is what we call Satya Mithya relationship. Either you can use pot. Now, if you're really clever, you will tell me what is the difference between dream example and the pot example that I gave you. Do you see any difference?
This is an object, and in the dream it's my thoughts only.
Excellent. Super. Very good, Saraya. Okay. What is the difference? Here I'm giving you what? The objects which exist in waking, right? In the dream example, here there are real, empirically there are objects, right? Pot. In the dream example, everything is actually created by my thoughts. That is the difference. This, in our parlance, we call it empirical reality, vyavaharika. What is the definition of empirical reality, vyavaharika? It is there, therefore I see it. Pot is there, therefore I see it. This dream is entirely my personal creation. What does it mean? I can be dreaming of Paris and you can be dreaming of Cologne. Right? So that means you have created yet another picture of your yoga center and whatever, or your work, whatever. So that means it is entirely your subjective reality. This is what we call pratibhasika. This is empirically true, whereas this is what we call your subjective. This is, therefore you see it. Therefore, all of us, if there is a pot, it's not only Solen will see it, all of us will see it. But if it is your subjective reality, then what will happen? Only you will see it. The other person will not see it. So I see it, therefore it is. Do you understand the difference? One has empirical reality, the other one is your subjective reality. But actually, both our normal understanding is this is the truth and this is not true. Vedanta takes this or makes this also
Not true.
mithya, not totally true. Right? This is not totally not true, but it's not, it has this in-between reality. It is not totally independently existing, it has a dependent reality. What it does is, it shows, it throws our attention to this absolute reality, which is what we call paramarthika. The absolute. Paramarthika.
Can you please repeat that?
Sorry?
Can you please repeat that in Vedanta?
So what happens is, generally when we live in this world, this seems like the reality. Right? Pot is a pot, so that's reality. Suppose I project on pot something else, that is called subjectivity. what Vedanta does is, this spot, if it was totally real, there is no non-duality. It has this in-between reality. Neither I can say it is totally subjective, like my dream, nor I can say it is totally real, because the reality actually belongs to clay, which is only one. So
Nor
that
I can
means,
say it's an illusion or it's not real at all, it doesn't exist.
exactly. So it doesn't belong to this, it's not subjective, right? We are not saying the whole world is illusion, it's all subjective, we are not saying that. World is empirically there. This is why not only Sita Devi will give me an answer that this is a pen, but anybody who has proper mind in its place will answer the same question. It's not her subjective attribution to this. But suppose somebody passed by and that person didn't smile, 3 people can have 3 different interpretations. One person can say, yeah, she didn't see me. The other person can say, she doesn't like me. And the third person can say, well, who cares? So that means it's totally, that is your, yeah, because what is empirically real is she didn't smile. The interpretation is your subjective. It is your attribution. You understand? So this is why in psychology, what do? They try to remove these false attributions. When you remove your false attributions, they are doing a great service. What are they doing? They are making the mind clearer and clearer. This is a very important, without clear processes of thinking, the final reality is inaccessible. Your attributions have to become precise, and psychology does a big job in doing that. Makes your thinking processes right.
So in the clay pot example, like you said, the clay pot is the dependent reality, the clay is the independent reality. So is Vedanta saying the independent reality is Brahman?
Yeah, super. Excellent. Excellent. Now I have to show you how, right? Because just this example doesn't prove that. So I have to show you how the world of forms is dependent reality and Brahman is the independent reality. Absolutely. So I'm going to show you in the next class. Yeah.
One question about the dream example. What parts are the Satyam and the Nityam?
Okay. Yeah, very good. So that's a good question. In this, this is also mithya, right? This is also mithya, but it is a different order of mithya. This is what we call empirical mithya. Pot clay is an empirical mithya because pot is empirically there, but it is mithya because it has a dependent reality on clay, right? But how does this dream world, what is mithya and what is satyam? What is mithya and what is satyam?
No, dependent.
No, but in dream.
The dreamer is
You, the
Satya,
dreamer,
dream.
exactly, right? The entire dream world, what does it include? It includes dream time, dream space, dream buildings, dream coffee, dream waiter, dream drinker. They all have a dependent reality. Dependent upon what? The dreamer, exactly. The dreamer means the dreamer is actually what? The mind, right? The mind creates the whole picture. This is what we call Satya-Mithya relationship also. But it is only your mind. And that's why it is not called empirical. Because her mind can create a totally different reality in her dream. Whereas empirical reality means everybody sees it as pen. You understand? But this is also mithya, but of a different kind of mithya. Yeah? Is it clear? Okay.
So again, just going back to the same point on non-duality and duality. We took the example of clay and the pot.
Yes.
And therefore we said the pot is the dependent reality and the clay is the independent reality. Now again, one were to stretch the argument forward and say, what are we trying to achieve? We are achieving empirical reality, subjective reality and absolute. Can we therefore stretch it and say that eventually everything is made out of atoms and particles, which is a form of energy, and the absolute reality is nothing but energy? Is that how we can...
So something similar, but the conclusion is not energy. The conclusion is something else. Yeah, but similar method. So we will see it in the next class. Very similar. But going one step further. Because atoms and particles, you don't need Vedanta, you can, physics is enough. But it's true. But here, even a physicist will say that.
But I'm relating back to the early session that you had, where you said that both living organisms as well as mountains are a form of energy. And
I didn't say energy, I said intelligence. Energy is just inert. It doesn't have intelligence. No? So this is why, and by the way, energy exists within time and space. We are talking about the cause of the universe which has to precede time and space. So Vedanta goes little further. This is why we have Ishvara. Physicists will not have Ishvara. But the idea is the same. So I will use what you said, but I'll go one step further in the next class.
I'd like to know, that's what the physicists tried to explain when this boson particle came. That is supposed to be the God particle in physics.
Yeah.
But of course, that's all within time.
But see, even particle, then what happens? It becomes even further and further micro. Exactly. And it is still within time and space. So we are talking about intelligence from which the whole manifestation came. It has to precede time and space.
Yeah, cause of time and space.
Is a cause of it. This is why you can't totally, this is why actually when physicists listen to Vedanta, they love it. Why? Because it goes along with them up to a point and then it shows something else. Something else which they cannot arrive at, because why they can't arrive at? Because they use their eyes and observation. So Ishvara is not an object, so they can't get there. But at the same time, it's so logical, so they love it. That's why they get attracted. So many scientists get so attracted to Vedanta because it shows them something which is not illogical and at the same time takes them out of their paradigm. Yeah. Okay, let's stop.
Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.